ashamed of his wife, a man takes his mistress to an event, but is shocked by a hidden truth. Arif Shamri didn't hate his wife. He was just ashamed of her. So he took his lover to a business meeting as his wife. He thought he had everything under control, but what was about to happen at that meeting would leave him completely in shock. Arif Shamri had built a life of prestige and power, the image of a successful entrepreneur in his luxurious office. He cut an impressive figure, exuding confidence as he navigated business deals and armed his associates on the surface. He was the epitome of accomplishment, a man who seemingly had it all, however, beneath this polished exterior. Arif Shamri harbored deep disdain for his wife Fatima Al-Zari. They had been married for over 15 years in the early days. Fatima Al-Zari had been Arif Shamri's unwavering support, believing in his potential and helping him reach success. He craved she took care of their home, managed their daily lives, and stood by him through the lean years together. They shared dreams, laughed off challenges, and seemed like the perfect couple to face the world. But as Arif Shamri climbed higher in the business world, his perception of Fatima Al-Zari began to shift. She no longer fit the image he wanted to project. Fatima Al-Zari's quiet, simple demeanor stood in contrast to the glamorous life Arif Shamri now desired to him. She had become a hindrance to his ambitions, a woman too modest to dazzle at corporate garas and business meetings. Arif Shamri dismissed the idea of taking Fatima Al-Zari to these events, finding her unfit to represent his success. This is when Sophia Mamun entered his life. Sophia Mamun was everything Fatima Al-Zari wasn't: youthful, captivating, and confident. She thrived on attention and luxury, and Arif Shamri saw her as the ideal companion for his business dealings. He began to bring her along to important dinners, presenting her as his partner at social gatherings. Sophia Mamun drew eyes and admiration wherever she went, and Arif Shamri reveled in the power of having her by his side. Their affair deepened with each business meeting, and Sophia Mamun became a permanent fixture in his double life. Arif Shamri believed he had perfected his deceit to him. Fatima Al-Zari was merely a shadow in his life, someone he could easily keep at arm's length, but unbeknownst to Arif Shamri, she was more perceptive than he gave her credit for. She noticed his frequent business dinners, unexpected trips, and flimsy excuses. Meanwhile, Arif Shamri continued to orchestrate his plans with Sophia Mamun, believing he held all the cards. The opportunity of a lifetime presented itself to Arif Shamri in an exclusive meeting with foreign investors. This wasn't just another business deal. It was a chance to elevate his company to new heights with millions on the line. However, Arif Shamri knew that sealing this deal required more than financial acumen. Investors needed to be impressed, charmed by the right image. He briefly considered taking Fatima Al-Zari to the meeting, but quickly dismissed the thought. Fatima Al-Zari muttered to himself with disdain, imagining her reserved demeanor in the company of these high-profile businessmen. She lacked the spark and charisma he believed were essential to capturing the investors. Faye, on the other hand, was a perfect fit. Arif Shamri envisioned her radiating confidence, charming the investors with her beauty and poise. Satisfied with his choice, Arif Shamri made up his mind. Sophia Mamun would accompany him to this crucial meeting, and her presence would be the final touch to secure the deal. He saw her as the missing piece to his success, the allure that would capture the investors and elevate his position in their eyes. With Sophia Mamun by his side, Arif Shamri was convinced he could clinch the contract without a hitch. Yet Arif Shamri was acutely aware that Fatima Al-Zari could not know about the trip. Despite her outward trust, he couldn't risk any mistakes. He needed to carefully execute his plan, ensuring Fatima Al-Zari remained in the dark that evening. Arif Shamri sat down for dinner with Fatima Alzari, steeling himself for the first step in his deception. As she served the meal with her usual gentle smile, Arif Shamri initiated the conversation. "Love," he said casually, slicing into his steak. "Remember that important meeting I mentioned? It's finally been scheduled. I'll need to travel later this week, just for a day or two. It's critical for closing a major contract." Fatima Alzari, as always, looked at him with calm, trusting eyes. "Of course, dear. I know that means a lot. To you, if you need help packing, just let me know." Arif Shamri managed a composed smile, concealing his satisfaction at how smoothly his plan was unfolding. He knew Fatima Alzari trusted him completely and would never suspect his true intentions. "Thank you, love, but that won't be necessary," he replied lightly. Arif Shamri's confidence was unshaken. He believed he had everything under control. What he didn't know was that the true surprise of the evening would not come from the investors or the success of his plan. Fatima Al-Zari was quietly watching and waiting. Far more aware of her husband's betrayal than he realized, the moment of reckoning was drawing closer, and Arif Shamri was wholly unprepared for what lay ahead. "It was going to be a quick and intense trip. I prefer to travel light without too much baggage. Besides, this will be a great opportunity to seal that $1 million contract I've been telling you about. The investors are thrilled. We need to impress them, and I'm confident this will open enormous doors for the company," Arif Shamri said, full of determination. Fatima Al-Zari admired his dedication to work, unaware that he was meticulously planning the trip to be with his lover. In Arif Shamri's mind, everything was unfolding perfectly. He had arranged every detail to ensure Sophia Mame would be available on the travel date the following day. He called her with his usual confident tone. "Arif Shamri is on the phone with Sophia Maman. Sophia Maman, the meeting with the foreign investors is set. I want you by my side. It's going to be a significant event, and your presence will make all the difference. We'll impress them, and with you alongside me, I'm certain everything will go perfectly on the other end." Sophia Maman smiled, ready to step into a role as Arif Shamri's business partner. Everything was in place. Arif Shamri could already visualize the scene in his mind. He and Sophia Maman entering the meeting room, the approving looks from the investors, the signing of a lucrative contract, while Fatima Al-Zari would stay at home, ignorant of the truth, trusting in the facade of a husband devoted to his career. To Arif Shamri, everything was flawless. He would have the best of both worlds, success in business, and the ideal companion by his side. But what he didn't realize was that, no matter how perfectly he orchestrated his plan, something unexpected was waiting to shatter his confidence and tear down his illusion of control. The day of the trip to Argentina arrived, and Arif Shamri brimmed with confidence, with a smile on his face and a tailored suit. He arrived at the airport with Sophia Maman, who turned heads with every step. She looked stunning in an elegant dress that accentuated her figure and radiated a sophistication that Arif Shamri believed would be the key to winning over the investors as soon as they landed in Abu Dhabi. Arif Shamri and Sophia Maman headed straight to the luxurious conference room in the hotel where the meeting would take place. The setting was refined, with a large polished wooden table in the center surrounded by black leather chairs. The walls were adorned with modern artwork, and huge windows offered a breathtaking view of the city. The air was thick with anticipation. This contract had the potential to change the future of his company, and Arif Shamri was determined to shine. Arif Shamri walked into the room with an air of superiority, passing the receptionist without so much as a glance. He made his way directly to the table, where 3 investors awaited him. A middle-aged man with a serious expression and an aura of authority, a rather ordinary-looking woman exuding confidence, and another man who seemed more relaxed but equally attentive with a confident smile. Arif Shamri addressed them. "Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's a pleasure to finally meet you all. I'm thrilled to discuss the future of our partnership." He took a seat at the head of the table. Sophia Maman was beside him. The investors observed them closely, and Arif Shamri could feel their eyes shifting toward Sophia Maman, which only fueled his confidence. He introduced her with an air of pride before we began. Arif Shamri continued, "I'd like to introduce you to my wife, Sophia Maman. She is an integral part of who I am and what we are building." Sophia Maman offered a polite smile, but Arif Shamri couldn't help noticing the subtle reaction from the female investor. She raised an eyebrow, seemingly sizing up the situation, though Arif Shamri interpreted it as a positive response. The woman's faint smile hinted at something more guarded. "Bonjour. It's a pleasure to meet you, Sophia Maman." The female investor spoke in a measured tone, her English with Arabic accent, adding an air of refinement. She wore dark sunglasses with thick black hair cascading around her shoulders, and her bangs slightly veiled on one side of her face. "I'm sure you have valuable insights to share." Arif Shamri missed the subtle challenge in her words exactly. He replied eagerly, "Sophia Maman has a unique vision of the market, and her contribution will be crucial to our success." The female investor offered no more than a nod, and Arif Shamri launched into his proposal with renewed enthusiasm. He presented charts and figures while Phoebe nodded attentively at key moments. Seeming deeply engaged as he gestured with conviction, he declared our company is on the verge of a major breakthrough. "This contract is not just an opportunity for profits, but also a step towards an innovative future. With your investment, we can expand our horizons." The male investors seemed receptive, but Arif Shamri could sense the female investor's reserved demeanor. Her attention wasn't solely on the figures. It felt as though she was appraising the dynamic between him and Sophia Maman. Despite his rising confidence, something about her presence unnerved him. She had a mysterious yet familiar quality to her that Arif Shamri couldn't explain. He shook the thought away. His mind quickly returned to the meeting. "In your last report," she said with an edge, "you mentioned the need for structural changes. Could you elaborate on how you plan to implement them?" Arif Shamri smiled, trying to regain his sense of control. "Of course, we are ready to integrate new technologies that will boost our efficiency by 30%. Not only means higher profits, but also the opportunity to provide better service to our clients." Yet, as he spoke, the atmosphere began to shift. The female investor's gaze sharpened, as though she were assessing something beyond the presentation. Arif Shamri could feel his confidence beginning to waver under her scrutiny. He pressed on, ignoring the growing knot of discomfort in his chest. "How do you plan to handle governance issues that may arise with the implementation of these innovations?" she asked, her tone now direct and challenging. "It's crucial to ensure all stakeholders are engaged." Arif Shamri hesitated for a fraction of a second, caught off guard. He hadn't expected his uncertainty to show and quickly sought to regain his footing. "Absolutely," he responded, masking his unease with a practiced smile. "Committed to maintaining an open dialogue with all our partners. Transparency is key, and we're ready to address concerns one by one." As he continued speaking, a small alarm began to ring in his mind. He hadn't anticipated the conversation turning so intricate, and Sophia Maman's presence, which was supposed to serve as his greatest support, didn't seem to be having the effect he had imagined for the first time. He questioned whether bringing her had been the right choice. The female investor remained silent, but her eyes never left him. The tension in the room thickened, and Arif Shamri found himself grappling with an unsettling realization. Charm and appearances wouldn't suffice to manipulate the situation. He had underestimated his audience and overestimated his own influence. Arif Shamri was in the midst of his closing remarks when the female investor finally leaned forward. Her posture, which had been somewhat polite, now shifted to one of keen intensity. She removed her sunglasses, revealing dark, piercing eyes that seemed to read through him. She addressed Arif Shamri in fluent Arabic, her voice cool and unyielding. Miss Arif Shamri's charm alone will not secure this partnership. You must demonstrate true commitment and understanding. Otherwise, I am afraid our expectations will not be met. Arif Shamri felt his composure slip, a bead of sweat forming at his temple. He nodded, struggling to maintain a smile. Of course, madam. I understand perfectly. He replied, though he felt anything but confident, but deep down, he knew this woman wasn't easily swayed, and the illusion of control he had meticulously crafted was beginning to fracture under the weight of her scrutiny. The investor, with a firm voice and a piercing gaze, continued, Arif Shamri, can you explain how your company plans to maintain control over the infrastructure with this expansion? I noticed some recent changes in management. How are you handling that? Arif Shamri hesitated for a second, taken aback by the depth of the question. He hadn't prepared for inquiries about internal management. He thought quickly, trying to regain his composure and striving to maintain his confidence. He replied, yes, we're adjusting our team to ensure efficient management, we have trained professionals to handle any changes that may arise. The woman smiled slightly as if she had been expecting that vague answer. She leaned forward, keeping her gaze firmly on Arif Shamri, and the once-controlled atmosphere began to shift. The investor impressed further. And what about the new chief financial officer? I heard he's made some significant IFIC changes to operations. Are you already familiar with the new resource allocation policy he's implemented? Arif Shamri blinked, confused. How did she know about the recent hire? He hadn't yet been deeply involved with the new CFO, and operational changes were being managed by his subordinates. That detail left him feeling uneasy. Arif Shamri stammered, trying to maintain his composure. Yes, of course, we're aligning our strategies. Everything is under control. Sophia Mamen glanced at him with a worried expression, realizing that something was Miss Arif Shamri's smile began to fade, and he felt a chill run down his spine. This woman wasn't just an ordinary investor. She knew too much. But how was that possible? Then the investor leaned forward slightly, and with an almost provocative smile, she slowly began to remove her wig. The false hair slid off smoothly, revealing the dark, wavy locks of Fatima al-Zahri Arif Shamri wife, whom he would never have imagined seeing there in that context, took off her glasses and gently wiped away the heavy makeup that had disguised her. Familiar features, Fatima al-Zahri, with a calm yet sharp tone, said, Surprise, Arif Shamri. The shock had hit Arif Shamri like a punch to the gut. His heart raced, and he stood frozen. It was as if the ground had vanished beneath his feet. He blinked repeatedly, trying to grasp what was happening, but the truth struck like thunder. Arif Shamri stammered disbelief heavy in his voice. Fatima al-Zahri, what are you doing here? Fatima al-Zahri, now stripped of her disguise, kept her gaze fixed on Arif Shamri. Sophia Mamen, standing next to her, was paralyzed, completely bewildered by the unfolding events. Fatima al-Zahri, wearing an expression of calm and control, spoke slowly. I was one of the main investors in your company, Arif Shamri, and while you were busy trying to deceive me and parading around with your mistress, I was silently building my own empire. I knew everything, every move, every meeting, and now I control a significant part of your business. Arif Shamri felt the color drain from his face. His mouth opened and closed several times, but no words came out. The revelation was like an avalanche, crushing every ounce of his confidence. Everything he believed he had control over was slipping through his fingers in a whisper. Still incredulous, Arif Shamri muttered, "No, this can't be true, you how?" Fatima Alzari, with a superior smile, replied, "Yes, Arif Shamri me. While you underestimated me, I was quietly accumulating shares and influence in the company. I made smart investments, and now here I am, the woman you thought wasn't good enough for your business. She is controlling more than you ever imagined." The other two investors looked at Arif Shamri with a mix of surprise and mild disdain for them. Everything made sense now that Arif Shamri was completely exposed and vulnerable. He tried to compose himself, but his hands trembled slightly as he looked at Fatima Alzari, still in disbelief and desperate to regain some control. Arif Shamri asked, "But why Fatima Alzari? Why did you do this?" "We're married," Fatima Alzari's voice remained steady, but her words cut deep. "It seems you forgot that more times than I can count. And as for being the CEO, well, maybe you should pay more attention to what's happening in your own company while you were focused on keeping up appearances and betraying me. I was busy planning my own future." The silence in the room was overwhelming. Arif Shamri glanced at Sophia Mamère, hoping for some kind of support, but she stood there stunned and unsure of how to react. His face was tense, his hands clammy, and he had completely lost control of the situation. With a trembling voice, Arif Shamri pleaded, "Fatima Alzari, please, we can fix this. Make things right. It doesn't have to be like this." Fatima Alzari coldly and relentlessly responded, "Fix what, Arif Shamri? You betrayed me, you disrespected me, and you thought I was just furniture in your life. Now it's too late for regrets. I'm in control, and you, well, you'll have to face the consequences of your actions." Arif Shamri sank into his chair, feeling the weight of the world crumble around him. Everything he had built, his image, his business, was falling apart before his eyes. And worst of all, the person he had always underestimated was the one who brought him down as Fatima Alzari. The other investors and even Sophia Mammen stared at him in silence. Arif Shamri realized that his arrogance had blinded him. He had believed he controlled everything and everyone around him, but now he saw that it was his wife who had been in control all along. He underestimated Fatima Alzari, assuming she remained oblivious to his actions. But unbeknownst to Arif Shamri, Fatima Alzari was more perceptive than he gave her credit for. Rather than confronting him outright, she quietly observed, piecing together the fragments of his betrayal despite her growing suspicions. Fatima Alzari chose patience over confrontation, waiting for the right moment to act, and unlike him, she had played the game flawlessly after the initial shock. Arif Shamri was still trying to process his wife's presence in that boardroom, while Fatima Alzari remained calm as if everything had been part of a perfectly orchestrated plan. The silence in the room seemed eternal until Fatima Alzari decided to break it, delivering her truth with a calculated and relentless precision. Fatima Alzari, with a serious but firm voice, said, "You know, Arif Shamri, it wasn't that hard to discover your betrayals. In fact, you were never very good at hiding what you were doing. I knew from the very beginning, from the very first suspicious glance, from the first poorly concocted excuse. But instead of confronting you, I chose to let time work in my favor." Arif Shamri was still stunned and tried to maintain his composure, but his breathing was erratic. He glanced at the other investors, but they remained expressionless, clearly awaiting the conclusion of this uncomfortable situation. Sophia Mammen, his lover, just stared at Fatima Alzari, unsure of what to say or do. Arif Shamri, stammering, still incredulous, began to speak. "Fatima Alzari." I can explain. It wasn't Fatima Alzari who interrupted him with a piercing look. "Explain what Arif Shamri said." that you betrayed me with Sophia Mamen, and that you treated me like an obstacle, that you despise and underestimated me," she continued. "I already know all of that. The question is no longer about what you did, but what I did while you thought you were in control." She paused. Crossing her arms and facing Arif Shamri, who now looked utterly defeated, he felt his heart racing as if an invisible chain was anchoring him to his chair. "Fatima Alzari, with a cold expression, continued while you were distracted. I was building something. I observed, I learned, I studied slowly, and I began acquiring shares of your company, investing and making decisions you couldn't even fathom. And now, as you can see, I'm one of the primary investors. Every step you took in the last few years was carefully watched by me. I saw you stumble, but I never worried. I knew that in the right moment everything would align, and that moment has arrived." Arif Shamri began to sweat profusely. The weight of what Fatima Alzari was revealing was overwhelming. He had always believed himself to be the genius behind the company's success, but now he realized there was a much greater, more strategic force orchestrating everything. That he had thought was his personal victory was in fact guided by the hands of his wife, Arif Shamri, his voice shaking with desperation. He tried to protest, "But the company, Fatima Alzari, if you do this, you'll destroy everything. I'm the CEO, you can't." Fatima Alzari cut him off, her voice icy, and destroyed the company. "I'm not you, Arif Shamri. I worked tirelessly to ensure its success. While you were busy keeping up appearances, I was the one truly in control. You are merely a face, a facade. If there's anyone who can take care of this company, it's me." She paused dramatically, watching the impact of her words settle over Arif Shamri. Now he was beginning to grasp just how vulnerable he truly was. Not just his image, but his business was crumbling before his eyes. Fatima Alzari, with a slight smile, added, "And this meeting, I organized it all. I wanted to give you a chance to show everyone who you really are. I thought it would be interesting to watch you bring your lover to a meeting that I arranged, trying to sell your perfect image. And guess what? You didn't disappoint. Now everyone here knows who you really are." Arif Shamri glanced around, feeling the weight of the other investors. The men beside Fatima Alzari maintained neutral expressions, but he knew they must be silently judging his lack of professionalism. Arif Shamri, completely at a loss, tried to gather himself. "Fatima Alzari, I didn't know, I never imagined you." Fatima Alzari, now looking at him with utter disdain, replied, "Exactly what you never imagined, because you never paid attention to me. You thought I was just a simple wife incapable of understanding business, a burden you carried, but while you were betraying me, I was preparing myself. You underestimated the wrong person." Arif Shamri tasted the bitterness of defeat in his mouth for the first time. He was confronting the harsh reality that everything he believed he controlled, including his wife, was slipping from his grasp. The tension in the room was nearly palpable, and he knew he was on the brink of losing not only his wife, but also his reputation, and possibly even the company he took so much pride in. Fatima Alzari delivered her final blow implacable. "I don't need you, Arif Shamri. The company doesn't need you. I can handle everything on my own, and I will. Now you can keep parading around with your lovers, but understand that when it comes to business, you're no longer anyone. This was your last mistake." The silence in the room was suffocating. Arif Shamri looked to Sophia Mamer, hoping for some sort of support, but she seemed as lost as he was. She avoided his gaze, likely realizing she had been pulled into something far larger than she had imagined, with nothing more to say. Arif Shamri lowered his head, utterly defeated. He had lost respect, lost trust, and is now possibly even the very company he once cherished Fatima al-Zahri stood up calmly, addressing the other investors with a confident posture. She announced, "Now that we've clarified things, we can proceed with the partnership details, if you'll allow me. I have some proposals I'd like to discuss." The investors nodded, recognizing Fatima al-Zahri as the true leader in the room. Arif Shamri, for his part, remained silent, knowing that everything he had built both personally and professionally was in ruins. The feeling of helplessness was overwhelming, and he knew that from now on he was merely a spectator to his own downfall, a witness to the inevitable. The man who always believed he was in control now found himself utterly abandoned. His once unshakable confidence crumbled, leaving behind a deep sense of humiliation and regret. Fatima al-Zahri now standing and clearly in command. She cast one final look at him before speaking, her voice firm and resonant in the room. Arif Shamri regarding the company. Fatima al-Zahri began, her tone steady but authoritative. "I still have some decisions to make that will impact both the future of the business and our personal relationship. You'll know soon enough I'm not going to resolve everything here." And now she paused, locking her gaze onto his. There was an air of coolness in her expression, laced with a hint of irony. "I'll let you reflect on all of this for a while." Arif Shamri tried to respond, but his throat was dry and the words refused to come out. He knew that any attempt to fix things in that moment would be futile. Fatima al-Zahri held not only the reins of the business, but also the fate of his life in her hand. Sophia Mamen, realizing there was no longer a place for her in this scene, felt the weight of confusion and discomfort pressing down. She glanced briefly at Arif Shamri, but he didn't even register her presence. All she saw in him was a defeated man, a broken reflection of the confident figure she had thought she was involved with without a word. Sophia Mamen rose from her chair with as much discretion as possible. She moved quickly and quietly slipped out of the room, avoiding the eyes of the investors or Fatima al-Zahri. Knew her presence there was irrelevant now, and within minutes, she would be forgotten by everyone. Fatima al-Zahri watched Sophia Mamen leave, but gave her little importance. The mistress, in the end, was merely an insignificant piece in the larger puzzle that Fatima al-Zahri had constructed. The focus was solely on Arif Shamri and the way he had underestimated her intelligence and patience. All those years, the other investors began gathering their documents, already aware that the purpose of the meeting had shifted entirely. They cast respectful glances at Fatima al-Zahri. Impressed by her stance and control over the situation, they understood that from now on, any decision regarding the company partnership would be in her hands. Turning to them, Fatima al-Zahri offered a slight smile and spoke with confidence. "Thank you for your patience. We'll be in touch soon to discuss the next steps. I believe we're all eager to see the company thrive under these new decisions." The door closing marked the end of that meeting, a meeting that should have been a moment of triumph for Arif Shamri, but had instead become his greatest defeat once everyone had left. Fatima al-Zahri gave Arif Shamri one last look. He remained seated, his trembling hands resting on the table. He seemed to have aged in mere minutes, weighed down by the crushing revelation. Fatima al-Zahri's final words came without a hint of emotion. "When I'm ready, you'll know my decision. Until then, take this time to reflect on your mistakes." With that, she turned and left the room, leaving Arif Shamri alone. The door closed with a soft click, and the sound echoed in Arif Shamri's mind like the end of an era. He was left there utterly and completely alone. Arif Shamri sat in his now dimly lit apartment, staring blankly at the empty bottles on the table. The grandeur of his meeting room was a distant memory replaced by the echoing silence of a life stripped down to its bare bones. He was no longer the man in control, no longer the one giving orders. The realization hit him with every passing second, with every breath that felt heavier than the last. He reached for his phone, hoping for a message or a call, anything that would signify he was left there utterly and completely alone. Arif Shamri sat in his now dimly lit apartment, staring blankly at the empty bottles on the table. The grandeur of his meeting room was a distant memory replaced by the echoing silence of a life stripped down to its bare bones. He was no longer the man in control, no longer the one giving orders. The realization hit him with every passing second, and with every breath that felt heavier than the last. He reached for his phone, hoping for a message or a call, anything that would signify he wasn't truly alone in this new reality, but the screen remained blank, just like his future Fatima Al-Zahri's steady and unyielding voice kept playing in his mind. "You'll know my decision." Soon those words haunted him. He had laughed at the thought of her being capable of action, let alone revenge, but she had taken his arrogance and used it as the very foundation of his downfall. Arif Shamri underestimated her, assuming her silence meant submission. Now all he could hear was the silence of his own downfall. He let out a hollow chuckle. Fate had a twisted sense of irony when the official notice arrived. Arif Shamri skimmed the word, but their meaning didn't sink in. His heart pounded in his chest, and beads of sweat formed on his forehead. He read the notice again, slower this time, trying to grasp the reality that Fatima Al-Zahri had filed a lawsuit months ago. His hands shook, making it hard to keep the paper steady. The words were cold and unfeeling, spelled out his doomed division of assets, majority ownership and control over the company. It all felt like a surreal nightmare. Bad dream he couldn't wake up from the court's decision. Swift, almost ruthless. Fatima Al-Zahri's quiet acquisitions over the years had paid off, giving her a significant stake. Her direct contributions, once dismissed by Arif Shamri as inconsequential, were now the linchpin in the legal proceedings. The judge's gavel struck with finality, and with it, Arif Shamri's illusion of power shattered. He was no longer the master of his fate. Fatima Al-Zahri held all the cards, and she played them with precision. Arif Shamri's world unraveled further when Fatima Al-Zahri fired Sophia Maymin. Without ceremony, she sent a cold, impersonal email saying, "Your services are no longer required." Fia Maman had been a fixture by Arif Shamri's side, his confidant and lover, but now she was discarded like a used tool. It took her less than an hour to pack her things and walk out of the office, leaving Arif Shamri to face the fallout alone. Sophia Maman didn't look back, didn't call, and didn't even leave a note. She had aligned herself with power, and now that Arif Shamri had lost his, she had no reason to stay. Days blurred into weeks, and Arif Shamri felt the weight of every passing hour. The apartment, once filled with luxury and laughter, now felt cold and unfamiliar. He lost everything that defined him, his job, his wealth, his reputation. The silence was only broken by the occasional ding of news alerts on his phone, each one announcing another victory for Fatima Al-Zahri's company. Every headline was a cruel reminder of his failure. Each success is a testament to Fatima Al-Zahri's strength. Fatima Al-Zahri, on the other hand, thrived. She restructured the company, implementing changes Arif Shamri never had the foresight to make her leadership bring in a multi-million-dollar contract, something Arif Shamri had only dreamed of securing. As the company's profits soared, so did Fatima Al-Zahri's confidence. She was no longer the timid woman Arif Shamri once belittled. She was the woman who had outsmarted him, outplayed him, and taken everything he held dear. Arif Shamri watched from afar, disconnected from the life he once knew. The bitterness in his heart grew with every new article, every mention of Fatima al-Zahri's achievements. He had built the company with his ambition, but it was Fatima al-Zahri's quiet determination that had turned it into an empire he could only see from the outside now, through news feeds and whispered conversations that stopped when he walked by one day as he walked aimlessly through. Through the streets, he passed by the company's towering headquarters. His eyes lingered on the building's name, which now bore Fatima al-Zahri's name. In bold letters, the sight felt like a knife twisting in his chest. He had built this legacy, yet he was nothing more than a forgotten chapter in its story. Weight of his mistakes pressed down on him, and for the first time, Arif Shamri understood the depth of his downfall. He had been blinded by his pride and his need for control. Now he was stripped of everything, left with nothing but the echoes of his past and the cold reality of a future shaped by the very woman he had underestimated. And that was Arif Shamri's story, a costly lesson in arrogance and underestimating others. As we reflect on everything he lost and everything Fatima al-Zahri achieved, it's hard not to wonder if we sometimes fall into the same trap of pride and complacency. If this story made you think or opened up a new perspective, leave a comment below. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe button so you won't miss our upcoming videos. Let's continue sharing thought-provoking stories and learning from life's mistakes together. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.